Our next question comes from our friend Damien Kaiser, who has a concern about cauliflower ear. He says, great video and thanks for the amazing work that you are doing. Thank you. Appreciate that. I have a desire to start training in Muay Thai and BJJ. However, I am concerned about cauliflower ear. I know there are preventative measures I can take, such as headgear, syringes, and treatment. I want to know how you manage to maintain those ears of yours from all that combat. Thanks. Note, please make a video on this topic. Well, here's your video, Damien. Here's the thing. Some guys get cauliflower ear and some guys don't. If you look at this ear, up at the top, there's just this little bud. That is the most cauliflower ear I ever got. And I wasn't one of those guys who didn't want to get it. I actually did. I was like, I want cauliflower ear so people can see that I trained, so they can stare at my ears and be like, oh, that guy's a badass. Because as a young man, that seemed important to me. And this is the most I ever got. It swelled up a little bit, and I was like, I'm getting it. I'm going to have ears like a grappler. Oh, cool. And then it went down, and it didn't grow anymore. And that was it. And I've actually had some serious blows to my ear. I've had people grind up on these things. I've trained in the gi where people rub that abrasive stuff across their elbows, landed on the ears and all this. I've even had this ear torn off. I don't know if you can see the scar anymore. It's yeah, about right there. You can see that little crease. My very first pro kickboxing match, I had this ear torn off. It was hanging, just flopping around there. The guy threw a hook at my head, and the elastic in the glove, there's this little webbing strap in between the thumb and the mitt of a boxing glove. That caught on my ear and ripped it, almost tore it off of my head. So it's like gushing blood all over the place, and I had it surgically reattached after the fight. And still no cauliflower ear. And I've never worn protective gear on my ears. And I've logged thousands of hours on the mat. I've competed in 5 different professional combat sports, and in addition to that, I did amateur combat sports, including jiu-jitsu and catch wrestling and taekwondo and all this other stuff. But in spite of doing MMA and kickboxing and boxing and K1 fights and Muay Thai fights and Sanda fights and all these other combat sports experiences, again, that's the most cauliflower ear I've ever got in my life. This ear, on the other hand, you can see it's a little flat at the top, and this flat part, it didn't used to be flat, so it's just mild deformation. This one used to look more like this one. See how like the edge of the ear curls in right there, and this one, for whatever reason, flattened out. It didn't swell up, it didn't crumple, but it flattened out. Now, I have a friend, a student, Jomar. You've seen him in a couple of my other videos. He's the guy who's like, take his shoes in the self-defense video. A lot of people thought that was hilarious. He wrestled in high school, he wrestled in college. Throughout his wrestling career, he never got cauliflower ear. But as soon as he started taking Brazilian jiu-jitsu classes in the gi, he started getting cauliflower ear. And it was probably because of the change in friction, because in wrestling, you're just wearing a singlet, there's not a lot of friction there. In jiu-jitsu, you wear a gi and it's got a rough surface on it, and that can aggravate these ears. So if you're really concerned about cauliflower ear, just train with some ear protectors, train with some headgear on, that wrestling headgear. And another alternative to that is a water polo helmet or water polo headgear. In Shanghai, it can be very difficult to find the Western-style wrestling headgear that protects your ears. So a great alternative, especially for jiu-jitsu, is the water polo headgear. It's softer, it's more malleable, it kind of wraps around the front, offers a little protection against cuts over the eyes, and also protects the ears against chafing and rubbing and things like that. So again, if you can get a hold of that, if that's more readily available than the harder wrestling headgear, and it's also a lot less abrasive on your training partners. Because if you got the wrestling headgear with those plastic card things over the top, and you were grinding on somebody else, man, you can can give them a case of cauliflower ear with that. A big misunderstanding is that cauliflower ear comes exclusively from grappling or wrestling. It doesn't. It can also come from striking. If you watch my podcast with my friend Kyle Rozuski, he's got some pretty extensive cauliflower ear on both sides. And he didn't get that until he had an MMA fight where he took some hammer fists to the ear. The guy was pounding on his ear, and that resulted in swelling and cauliflower ear. So it can come from striking or grappling. And again, I've taken plenty of strikes and plenty of people squishing my ears and nothing. Again, some guys like me seem to be mostly immune to it, but then again, who knows? Maybe in 20 years, my physiology is going to change, and all of a sudden my ears are going to swell up, and I'll be like, finally, I got my cauliflower ear. Now people will finally believe that I'm a real grappler. So there are plenty of guys out there who will look at your ears and think, his ears aren't ugly enough, so he must not know how to wrestle. But yeah, not everybody gets it. Some people do, some people don't. So, how did I manage to avoid it? Luck. Really just that, luck. So if it is a legitimate concern for you, and you know what? I'm going to tell you something else. I was never afraid of cauliflower ear. I'm still not afraid of it. If I get it, cool. I'm going to tell you something my older brother told me. He said, what you are most afraid of will happen to you. If you are afraid of getting cauliflower ear, you're probably going to get it. There's a story to illustrate this point. My mother is terrified of escalators. She really doesn't like going up in escalators because her greatest fear is she's going to fall over the side. And years ago, my mom went to visit my sister and her husband and her kids, and she was at the airport, and she's on the escalator with my nephew, my little nephew, and he looks over the side, and my mom, her greatest fear is that somebody's going to fall off the escalator, and so she rushes over to save my nephew from jumping off the side of the escalator, which he probably wasn't even going to do, but that was her big fear. And as a result, she ended up falling over the side of the escalator herself, and my brother-in-law caught her by the ankle and dragged her, kicking and screaming all the way to the top until they managed to pull her back to safety. So her greatest fear actually happened to her. So my advice, just relax, man. If you get cauliflower ear, it's not the end of the world. Look on the plus side. People are going to look at you and they're going to be like, oh man, this guy must be an amazing grappler. I'm not going to mess with him. He's got cauliflower ear. Whereas if you've been grappling for as long as I have and you don't have grappling, what was I going to say? Cauliflower ear. Man, you get no respect, man. You get no respect. Anyway, thanks for the question. Good luck to you. Protect those ears if it's a big issue. And at the end of the day, it really isn't. So just relax. Thanks for watching. Get out there and train.